Cinema Classics is brought to you by the Gateway Film Center, 1550 North High Street, Columbus, Ohio. Further details and showtimes online at gatewayfilmcenter.com.
The award-winning Cinema Classics is produced by John DeSando and Johnny DiLoretto. Listen to the shows online at WCBE.org and like us on Facebook. I'm Johnny DiLoretto.
And I'm John DeSando.
This is Cinema Classics.
It is.
We are at the Gateway Film Center, and on June 7th at 2 p.m. we continue our Cinema Classics film series here at Gateway Film Center with a screening of Young Frankenstein. We haven't really, when you think back on all the films that we've screened, not too many of them have been comedies.
No, I think maybe we've had Blazing Saddles,
But yeah, as a part of Double Barrel.
Right.
The Western series.
Yeah. Comedies are tough.
We had the Philadelphia Story.
Yeah.
Recently.
Yep.
We've shown The Graduate. But we launched Cinema Classics with Dr. Strangelove.
Yeah.
And I think that's it for comedies, really.
Because I think comedies are difficult. If it's not Some Like It Hot, it's not much. That's why Mel Brooks and this Young Frankenstein is so good. Because he had the producers in Blazing Saddles.
Right, he was on a big role. He was on a big role in the early to mid 70s.
Yeah.
What was interesting about Mel Brooks, and here's the thing, Mel Brooks and Woody Allen were kind of coming up at the same time, coming into their own as directors and comedians, as film comedians rather. And one was always sort of going for something a little more intellectually satisfying. That would be Woody Allen, in case you were. The other one was sort of mired in a lower brow kind of humor, and that would be Mel Brooks. Now, upon further examination, you can find really smart material in Brooks, and you can find really lowbrow material in Woody Allen. Both of them, though, however, were obsessed with film.
Yeah.
And their movies are full and rife with references to classic movies. Sure. This one, obviously, overt.
Yeah, say James Whale's Frankenstein and Bride of Frankenstein,
Yeah.
ripping right off that baby.
And the other thing, John, when you think about that period of cinema, the 70s, there was a lot of great black and white photography. There was a lot of affection for old Hollywood during that time, probably because cinema was changing. Obviously, the 70s were the great period of artistic reform in Hollywood, and so there was this nostalgia for the 30s and the 40s. And this movie is beautifully shot. I mean, it really captures that James Whale, that thick, those inky blacks.
And that's such a good point, because Brooks had difficulties with Columbia Pictures about doing the black and white. They rejected him.
Yeah.
He went right over to Alan Ladd Jr. And at 20th Century Fox, and they took it.
Really?
They went with it. As you talk about it, it seems this is a no-brainer.
Well, think about it. You had The Last Picture Show, Bogdanovich's movie, which was in black and white. He also shot Paper Moon, which is another great comedy from that period, in black and white.
Sure.
Woody Allen had shot Manhattan in black and white. There were a lot of great movies that didn't need to be shot in black and white, but were.
But this one would look like it was begging to be
Yes,
black
what
and white.
needed to be in order to really capture the spirit of that.
That the lowbrow comedy you talked about, the really subversive kind of comedy that that Mel Brooks has with this. I think about the monster himself,
Mm-hmm.
and
Played by Peter Boyle.
boy, and I think about his dual nature.
Monster. We don't call Frankenstein's creature a monster. You realize that politically incorrect. He's a creature. He is a creature.
Right, he's still pretty monstrous to me. But I love the way Brooks plays with our perception of that. To me, as a kid growing up, Frankenstein was just simply scary. It was great scare. I love it.
Let me ask you about that. I know we're kind of jumping off topic, but Frankenstein today for modern horror audiences is not scary.
Right.
The creature is not scary. He's actually really sort of sympathetic and sad. What were you freaked out about as a kid when you saw that?
Well, the whole idea of being able to create something out of, for instance, body parts, is a completely new kind of thing. I remember medical science hadn't been yet so highly developed that we could be grafting, doing all kinds of things that we do these days. So that in itself, with the little kind of the sewing of the head and all that stuff, was visually scary.
Yeah.
Plus the guy was bigger than most people you ever knew.
Mm-hmm.
And we were only marginally aware of big guys in basketball, but even then the Boston Celtics weren't as big as they are today. So everything in proportion at that time for a kid was outsized and scary. And the whole business about being able to create something that you couldn't control was another. Now here, today we know we're so worried about the dynamics of fertilization, of changing genes.
Yeah.
That there was nothing like that at that time. So this was all very new. Plus, whatever he did on his sets were great.
Yeah.
This is before any digital enhancements.
You're talking about which? The James Whale films or the Brooks
Thank you.
movie?
Thank you.
Because you're right.
Look what I just did.
I know, but neither one of them, CGI didn't exist for either one of them.
But they used the same. Brooks went to the garage of the guy who did all of the paraphernalia.
Oh, is that right?
And he kept it.
He went to the garage of the guy that designed the stuff for
that had all the little bzz, 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 all
cool.
that stuff, and he used the same one. But I was so interested that I had slipped back into Whale.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that great?
That
I
is
love it.
yeah. That's how much it captures the spirit and the look of those 1930s films. Comic performances: Gene Wilder as Dr. Frankenstein.
Right.
Frankenstein. Gene Wilder was obviously, just one of the great comic performers in all of Hollywood, especially at that time. Peter Boyle, we mentioned, plays the creature. Madeline Kahn, is in the movie.
Here we go. Chi-Chi.
Marty Feldman.
Terry Garr.
Terry Garr.
I loved Terry Garr.
Cloris Leachman. Listen to that cast. What a great
Kenneth
cast.
Mars.
Who's Kenneth Mars? Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah, Kenneth Mars. Inspector Kemp.
But Marty Feldman as Igor or Igor.
Igor, yeah. There's a lot of playing on the pronunciation of the names. Marty Feldman, I don't know if everybody remembers, but Marty Feldman was kind of a goofy comedian, and he had those bulging eyes, and that was his, calling card.
Peter Lorre in comics.
Yeah, that's interesting. But you know what? I can almost never remember Marty Feldman being in anything else other than Young Frankenstein.
No.
And yet, he's like this, at that time, he was a big name. I don't know, he was probably in a couple of other Mel Brooks movies. But here, he is perfect as Igor, Frankenstein's assistant.
And, Brooks just simply had no governor on himself.
Mm-hmm.
When he did this stuff, he went after everything. When you think about how open comics might be today, look at how open he was to attack anything in our culture and make fun of it and make us laugh.
Mm-hmm.
And here, we were pretty cloistered at that time, ready to break out. And Mel Brooks does it for us. Says, you can laugh at this. Look at, it's the way he did with the producers with Springtime for Hitler.
Yeah.
Who in the world would have thought you could make that funny?
Right. Well, that's because he's Jewish, and he comes out of that. He comes out of that long line of, Jewish humor. Tapping into the pain. Because you have to tap into human pain and human suffering in order to be that funny. I think. Go ahead. What were you gonna say?
Yeah. So I guess I was gonna say that it's how he subverts everything and how so perfectly for the time in which we were really exploding, mind blowing in the 70s. Things were really opening up wide, but they hadn't yet.
See, it's interesting because he was a much more commercially successful comedian filmmaker than Woody Allen was at that time.
Yes.
I think Woody Allen stuff, though, and what a huge fan I am of it.
Yeah.
That stuff, I think, is remarkably accessible, but most people don't perceive it as being accessible, and certainly not in the way that Mel Brooks's films were really accessible. One, because he's, I guess a lot of the Woody Allen references, or a lot of the references in Woody Allen films to earlier films were like, he was talking about Bergman. He was spoofing Bergman.
Yeah.
And
Right.
Mel Brooks was spoofing Hitchcock and James Whale,
Yeah.
So these films were really successful. Blazing Saddles was probably one of the most successful comedies of all time up to that point.
There's a scene so subversive in there, it is remembered today, even by my grandchildren. And this would be the one sitting around the campfire.
Oh, yeah.
Eating beans.
Right.
Yeah. What?
His body humor.
It appeals to every teenager or below the 8, 9
But you're
year
right.
old.
Prior to Mel Brooks making fun of flatulence in Blazing Saddles, it was a taboo subject. That's a great point, actually. You know, I mean, like, think of that. Think how often after that, flatulence or getting kicked in the testicles has become like a standard comedy trope. Not until Mel Brooks sort of, you know, tore down. Like, it's kind of silly to think of it as revolutionary, right?
Yeah.
But it was.
Well, now in this movie, there's one of your favorite actors who was not credited initially.
Oh, Gene Hackman.
Right.
Yeah.
What does he play? The blind?
He plays the old blind man on the farm. You know, the guy or whatever that Frankenstein kind of wanders in and befriends.
And do you remember? He says a line that he ad-libbed, and they left it in. He says, "I was going to go make an espresso."
Yeah.
That was
That's
funny.
funny.
And just kept that in there. And so moments like that, I suspect that Mel Brooks captured how many that were just simply ad-libbed because there was so much energy, so much comic energy.
Yeah. I was just going to tell you to get on the mic because you were like...
Yeah, I know, I do that. Yeah. Anyway, so we're looking at June 7th.
June 7th at 2 p.m. our Gateway Film Center Cinema Classics presentation of Young Frankenstein. If you want to show up early, we're open for brunch at noon. You can join us for brunch. John and I will be hanging out in the torpedo room, ready and willing to talk about this film or any other film.